Some places are so drenched in tragedy that the very land seems to soak up the sorrow, giving birth to nightmares that never leave. Blackridge Farm was once a thriving homestead, but now it stands abandoned, haunted by a presence no one can explain. In this real paranormal story, we'll dive into the chilling experiences of two paranormal investigators who dared to uncover the secrets of this haunted place. Blackridge Farm was built in the 1920s by the Miller family, a prosperous family of ranchers. For decades, they lived peacefully, but in 1956, something terrible happened. Jacob Miller, the eldest son, went missing under strange circumstances. His body was never found, and some say his spirit still roams the farm, searching for answers. By the 1980s, the farm was abandoned. Locals whispered about strange occurrences on the property. Lights turning on in the old farmhouse, strange noises in the barn, and sightings of shadowy figures at night. The place quickly gained a reputation as haunted, and no one dared to go near it. Until November 2019, when paranormal investigators Mark and Rachel, always eager for a new case, decided to explore Blackridge Farm. What started as a typical investigation soon turned into their most terrifying experience yet. Mark and Rachel arrived at Blackridge Farm on a cold, misty evening. The air was heavy with silence, the only sound the crunch of leaves underfoot as they walked the overgrown driveway toward the dilapidated farmhouse. The windows were dark, the wood rotting, and the air carried a strange, metallic smell. Rachel paused at the entrance, looking up at the house. "I don't like this place. It feels wrong." Mark grinned, shrugging off the tension. "That's why we're here, right? To find out what's really going on." They set up their equipment, infrared cameras, voice recorders, and EMF detectors throughout the house. The evening started quietly, but as the night grew darker, the energy in the house seemed to shift. Around midnight, Mark suggested they investigate the basement. The stairs creaked under their weight as they descended into the dark, damp space. The air grew colder the further they went, and a musty, decaying smell filled their nostrils. As they reached the bottom, their EMF detector started beeping wildly. "We're not alone down here," Rachel whispered, her breath visible in the freezing air. Mark shone his flashlight around the room, revealing old farm tools and piles of broken furniture. Suddenly, Rachel felt something brush past her. She spun around, but nothing was there. "Did you feel that?" she asked, her voice shaking. Before Mark could answer, they heard a loud bang from behind them. One of the old wooden shelves had toppled over on its own, scattering debris across the floor. Both of them jumped back, their hearts racing. "There's definitely something here," Mark muttered. "Let's get upstairs." But as they turned to leave, a voice echoed through the basement, a low, guttural whisper that sent chills down their spines. It was saying something, but they couldn't make out the words. The basement felt alive, pulsing with an energy neither of them could explain. Back upstairs, Rachel sat at the kitchen table, reviewing their recorded audio. Her face went pale as she listened to the playback from the basement. "Mark, you need to hear this," she said, handing him the headphones. As Mark listened, his eyes widened. The whispering they had heard earlier was much clearer on the recording. "Get out," the voice repeated over and over. It was as if something was warning them. Suddenly, all the lights in the house flickered and went out, leaving them in total darkness. Their flashlights flickered too, as if drained by an unseen force. Rachel felt a presence behind her, cold air brushing against her neck. She turned slowly, and there, standing in the doorway, was a shadowy figure. A tall man, his face obscured, but his eyes glowing faintly in the dark. Mark saw him too, frozen in place. The figure slowly raised an arm and pointed at them, his presence filling the room with a suffocating sense of dread. "We need to leave now," Rachel whispered, her voice trembling. But before they could move, the figure vanished and the door slammed shut. They were trapped inside. The next few hours were a blur of terror. Every room they entered seemed to pulse with energy, the walls creaking, footsteps echoing on the floor above them, though they were alone. Rachel swore she could hear voices, whispers that grew louder the longer they stayed. "Did you hear that?" she asked Mark as they stood in the hallway, but he didn't answer. He was staring at something behind her. Rachel turned and screamed. The figure was back, this time closer, its dark form barely visible in the dim light. It moved toward them slowly, its face still obscured, its presence filling the air with a thick, oppressive weight. Mark grabbed Rachel's arm and they ran for the front door, but it wouldn't open. The doorknob was ice cold, and no matter how hard they pulled, the door wouldn't budge. Panic set in as the figure drew closer. Just when it seemed like there was no escape, the door flew open on its own. They stumbled outside, gasping for breath as the heavy door slammed shut behind them. The house seemed to breathe, the energy inside still swirling as they stood in the cold night air. They didn't look back as they ran to their car, desperate to leave Blackridge Farm behind. Mark and Rachel made it out of Blackridge Farm that night, but they weren't the same after the experience. The footage they captured was disturbing, shadowy figures, strange lights, and the ominous voice telling them to get out. They left the property, vowing never to return, but the feeling of being watched stayed with them long after they had left. They shared their story online, warning others about the dangers of Blackridge Farm. Since then, the property has remained abandoned, but those who dare to venture near claim to hear the same whispers, feel the same cold presence, and see the shadow of a man watching from the windows. Blackridge Farm is still out there, waiting for its next visitors. But be warned, once you step inside, you might not leave the same. Thank you for watching this episode from The Lures of the Past. If you enjoyed this journey into mystery and intrigue, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Make sure to turn on the notification bell so you'll be the first to know when our next tale from the past goes live.